Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Am Christina DiArcangelo. And today, my guest, I'm very happy to have on today. We've just met not too long ago, and we realized in our first discussion how much synergy we have from a human standpoint to our business values, our integrity standpoints. So, welcome, Genaro. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Miss Christina. What a wonderful, wonderful, podcast. And I'm glad that you invite me today because I'm very happy to show the community, part of my life, a little bit of everything. And my experience as a, bilingual news correspondent with expertise in media relations, public relations as a publicist too. What an honor. What a morning, what a great morning or afternoon in other part of the world or
Yeah,
night.
it's afternoon over here. It's nighttime in India. That's what my staff sleeping over there. So
Oh my God. I'm in Texas. For those who doesn't know, I'm in the border of McAllen, Texas. I'm like 3 hours away driving from Austin, Texas, Houston to. I'm in the middle of the border. You're always gonna be eating good stuff at the border. I told people good tacos because I'm Mexican, obviously.
it's
And there's a
awesome.
lot of stuff.
It's awesome. We did some work not too long ago in Texas with one of the studies that I was working on. We had a site in Dallas. And
Amazing.
so we went to Jerry's World because, it was right there. And oh my God, to see the Dallas Cowboys stadium and their arena and like, holy cow, and how clean everything is there. Like, because you live in Texas, all the people that clean up around it's beautiful. It's almost like being in California because it's so clean and
It's
tidy.
yeah, it's a wonderful city. Texas has have very wonderful cities. Like Houston is it's I don't want to say it's my favorite city, but I lived there like for 8 months. And Austin too, I lived there for 8 months because I was in a contract with a different with a different company with television. And I was amazed by the way the city it works. There's a lot of of course. Welcome to Houston. The traffic it's a little bit bad. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. And
Mhm.
it's like California literally. And I always say that Austin is like very quotation California because everybody from California or different parts of the world are moving to Austin. It's a little bit pricey to live there, but it's an amazing, amazing city because you have me. I'm a runner, so I like to run outside in the outdoors, suburbs and everything. So it's amazing. If you haven't visited Austin or Houston, try it. You gotta taste the great food, especially
Yeah,
here in the McAllen, Texas.
yeah, it's awesome. And you're right. A lot of people from COVID, right? Post
Yes.
COVID, during COVID, a lot of people moved to Texas because when I was talking to the physician staff at the
Mhm.
clinic in Dallas that we used, we develop relationships with everyone we work with. And we were talking specifically about that, about all the transplants that are coming in from the East Coast, coming down from California,
Yeah.
people even from Arizona are moving over. So it's been really interesting to see the migration patterns across the United States post COVID and where people are ending up. I mean, I know my CFO, he was in Manhattan during COVID. Like he's a true New Yorker, right? Been there for forever, went to school at Penn, but he's a Northeasterner. And when he was in the middle of COVID, he's like, that's it. I've had enough. I can't continue to live like this. I need to move somewhere else. So he went to Maine. He went like the furthest away from like society. And he's like, I don't have to worry about COVID out here. There's not enough people in Maine.
Yeah, those were very hard times for everybody. And I
Yeah.
remember when COVID arrived, 2020, I remember it was like around February or March or something. And I want to share with you, I had this opportunity that I've been working so hard in my life that I was waiting for. And then the COVID arrived and boom, kaboom, everything was destroyed for me in terms of opportunity. And I had to start from scratch again. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only one. I see the suffering of everybody who was working in New York as a professional. My friends in New York, my friends in Texas, my friends around. I have friends in Italy too. They were suffering a lot of what was going on with COVID at that time. And I mean, I think at the end it ended up like affecting us, everyone in the
Oh,
professional field, non-professional
mhm.
field. It was very bad. We
Yeah,
survived. I think we're survivors and
we're
worried.
survivors. We are. I mean, we did studies in COVID. We were working on COVID studies,
Hmm.
but we also did studies that were not COVID.
Yeah,
Okay. And so to try to convince it, and when you do studies, you have to call them subjects because that's
yeah,
our requirement.
yeah.
So I don't want people to think that I'm being mean by calling them a subject rather than a patient. So when we were trying to work with these subjects in the study, trying to have them feel safe enough to come to a visit, an office visit, when we're in the middle of COVID and they don't have COVID, they have something else, was really difficult. And it was very difficult to retain the subjects once we got them in. Then there's the point of them getting COVID while they're in a study. So the biochemistry changes in the human from COVID. So then we saw data that came out of these studies that we were running where we were stuck, in this spot where you're running a study, you can't shut it down because of this horrendous event that happened. So then it skewed some of the data results, right? Because the body was no longer the same as it was when you originally consented.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of stuff we saw,
Yeah, it was.
therapeutically and clinically, that was tough. And then my nonprofit, we kept getting all those COVID patients. I need help. How can you help us? I'm
Oh.
getting kicked out of my apartment, all these crazy things. And
Hmm.
so we were working round the clock, nonstop during COVID. We never stopped. It was a challenge. And then working directly with the FDA. And then I ended up working with the White House on one of the treatments that was not any of the ones that are approved today. It wasn't, the vaccines or any of that stuff. It was something else.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just seeing the dynamics up front and close, I've never worked with the White House before in my entire clinical research career. So it was really interesting,
I think it was very interesting for you working with the White House and in as an experience for you, like a different pathway, professional pathway. I think it was like you mentioned me before. What working for the White House and then with the COVID thing, it was challenging for you. I'm very sure it was.
Yes, it was. And like, just really seeing firsthand what was going on, right? That was crazy. So I can only imagine, like from a media standpoint, what you all went through, especially if you weren't reporting on COVID.
Yeah.
You were doing other things, and then everything blows up, and we have to try to figure out how to live our lives because it's different.
Yes. I was trying to figure it out. I remember when COVID arrived in 2020, I was trying to figure it out. Should I change my career? Because it was worse. Everything was decline. Everything was falling. My friend who was a news reporter in New York with I can't mention the name, but television, very known television in Spanish. Uh, he saw every day people dying on the streets, falling down like because they were sick, and there was a lot of bodies on the streets. That was on March 2020. He called me and he told me, I can't do this anymore. I don't
Mm.
want to live here in the city of New York. I've seen people dying, like just walking and then falling down and dying. And that was
Mhm.
like, oh, you gotta survive. You gotta inform the community. He was just at the end of the point, he was doing breaking news for newscast national TV for Latino network, and he was just crying because he was at the shelters doing the live, crying at the shelters that they need help, that people were
Yeah,
just falling down dying,
yeah.
and the New Yorkers or people New Yorkers, they were needing the help because everybody was dying. It was the worst time, and he ended up like wanted to quit or something, but he's aware and stay there and inform, and it was confinement and everything. There were a lot of sickness back 2020. You remember there was no medicine
No.
to
The
to
the
cure people.
refrigerated lockers that were coming in,
Yeah.
to store the bodies,
Yeah.
and there
Oh my
were
God.
big tractor trailer things. I mean,
Mhm.
Philadelphia, we had them lined up, downtown Philly, and we're watching all this stuff go on, and it's like, oh my God, and you're right, people are dropping dead on the street, the
Mhm.
homeless people,
Mhm.
people that became homeless because of COVID, uh, the shortages that we had, there was so much. And then the kids, how the kids had to come home. They no longer went to school. And then what happened to them
Yeah.
educational wise,
Mhm.
because a lot of the kids, they're just, in my opinion, I have one who's 10 now, but
Oh.
I know that, it was difficult because I had to keep him right there next to me.
Yeah.
He was a little guy trying to do his schoolwork on an iPad. And then he lost touch with his friends. Like you can't even physically see them. It was very hard for the children, the mental health that started to really uptake as a result of COVID. And we're still living in that space, right? The people who died from opiates.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And drug use because they just couldn't do it anymore. They just couldn't. The isolation killed them, literally. If they didn't have COVID, then we had this other issue.
Yeah, they had a lot of, like, I saw when I was doing a lot of stories with the community, they had depression, they have many stuff. People that every day used to go to work, being outside. Then people that never been in their house, they couldn't handle it. I don't know, in
No,
a certain way. I was doing an analysis in Philly too. There was a lot of back then. It was a lot of controversy with everything, and when I was living in Philadelphia in 2019, and my experience in the city as a news reporter and as a citizen was great. But I remember, I want to share this with you. I remember when they sent me to Kensington Street to do a
Kensington.
story. And I
Yep.
was not aware. Nobody told this Latino guy here what you're saying, that there
Oh
was
no.
gonna see whatever was gonna see. Oh my God. For those who doesn't know, Kensington is a street in Philly that it's consumed by the opioid system,
Mhm.
and everybody, you're gonna see it if you're living Philly, just drive over there, be careful, but you're gonna see what I'm talking about. There's a lot of people in drug addiction with opioids and fentanyl,
Mhm.
and it's, I don't know what's going on. And I saw a lot of stuff in there, and as a news reporter, I saw a lot. It was just bad. I mean, what is going on with the system? I don't know, but I know, I'm very sure you know what I'm talking about, and
Yes.
it was just sad. I mean, everybody,
It
I
was
don't know what to say. I mean, I was like
did
impressed.
did you watch that documentary about Purdue and the opiate epidemic and what happened really?
Yeah,
With the wealth and the titration of the
yeah,
dosing and the
yeah.
updosing and the redosing, and these people were becoming addicted to this because it changed their brain chemistry.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's what we see in Kensington is the fact that, these people, they got addicted to opiates. They couldn't afford opiates on the street anymore because the pills are much more expensive than what you can get, heroin or meth or something else that you can
Yes.
procure, right? Even street cannabis, people would
Mm-hmm.
get taking that too.
Right.
It doesn't give you that high
Yeah.
that, those other drugs do. But
And then I remember back in 2019, I was in Philly and I was talking to authorities and everybody in the health department too. They were trying to approve the Narcan, their Narcan,
yes,
for the people for those who doesn't know, when people are in an overdose situation, you apply a Narcan and they can live or survive. Some of those is too late, unfortunately,
yes,
but it was
yes.
just something very hard to, as a news reporter, I was like, wow,
It's
what is the real addiction here and everything. It
it,
was just,
it's so eye-opening, isn't it? And then you feel bad
yeah,
for them because you know what? Everybody looks at addiction differently, right?
yes. Hmm.
And a lot of times the things I hear from people is that they could fix this problem. These people can fix this problem. Well, they can't. When there's an addiction, there's an underlying issue that these people have that's not being treated. So they look to opiates, say, for
Yeah.
example, so that it can help them feel more regulated from a mental health standpoint or from a pain standpoint, because sometimes these people were taking it, they were given it for pain, and then they became addicted to it. And when we first met, we were talking about this stuff because you told me you went to Kensington, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you were in Kensington? Oh my God, and you made it out okay? It's a very scary place, but I had two family members that abused opiates in my immediate family, my mom and my brother. So I've
Hmm.
seen how it ravishes your family and how it can overtake that person and just, they're never the same. My brother was never the same after he started those opiates. And then he was in congestive heart failure at
Yeah.
32 or 33,
Yeah.
which was very young and had a defibrillator. And then when he ended up dying in 22, on the death certificate says it was COVID because he did catch COVID. I'm not gonna say he didn't. He did,
Yeah.
but his heart was at an 18% capacity at that time. So and he was young. He was in his early 40s when this all happened. And so he was the perfect storm for COVID because he was already impeded from a cardiovascular standpoint. So
Hmm.
there wasn't anything they could do for him because he was in really, really, he was in heart failure and then everything else shut down, kidneys, liver, everything else was going. And that was it. And so now he's gone. And so this is a lot of what has happened to these people who have become addicted to opiates, and the hospitals and the healthcare system fails these people because they know they're taking this stuff because they're popping on the toxicology,
Yeah.
right? They pull blood every time you
Hmm.
come into the hospital when you come in for a problem. They
Hmm.
know you're taking stuff. They know you're not prescribed because
Yeah.
there's an EMR, you can check to see what these people are taking.
It's just, I saw that in Kensington, and I was not, I don't want to say the term impressed, but I was like, because I saw this 17 years old and 18 years old community addicted and lost in the streets, and it was a shame. I mean, they're so young, and to be, to be in this situation and lost, and literally, I call it like the zombie street because everybody, it was lost. Everybody were lost. I'm sorry, and they were just walking without
Mm-hmm.
anything, knowing on their minds, under the influence of this drug addiction. And I couldn't be there for more than 2 hours. I was just, you know what, let's go. I
it's
mean,
it's it's almost like you got PTS from that, because
yeah,
it's
yeah,
right there in your face and you're doing your job, right? They tell you, okay, now, Genaro, you need to go and report on this because this
yeah,
is a serious thing and we need to create awareness to this, especially during that time because Purdue was still getting in trouble, for
yeah.
what they
No,
did, right?
yeah, no, and the other story that I was working in Philly, that I was back in 2019 too. It was the vaping. Vaping was a
Oh.
very hard issue around that time, 2019. Well, still, but it
Mhm.
was like many. The reason was that many young people, they were putting a lot of substances in the vaping liquids, or what they were mixing different stuff, and they were
Mhm.
ending up at the hospital, and
Mhm.
they didn't know what they were putting on the
The
stuff.
popcorn lungs. Yep. And not that we're trying to segue in and out to all the industries I work
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
It's just people get to see like why we have guests on the show because there's always something that shows that we're the same. Like that's the
right.
whole premise. But being in the cannabis space then and seeing that happen,
Hmm.
seeing because it really caused a problem for us from a stigma standpoint. We're already stigmatized,
Yeah,
in cannabis, and now people are using vapes not the proper way. And like you said, they
exactly.
were
Yeah.
mixing things.
Hmm.
They were putting chemicals in their lungs they didn't know. These
Right.
kids think it's whatever they're doing for whatever purpose they're doing it. And I'm telling you, Genaro, it's still happening. Like there's a intern that works for us at APA, Affinity
Hmm.
Patient Advocacy,
Hmm.
and he comes to me all the time. He's a younger kid. He's going
Yeah.
to be 16, and
Hmm.
he tells me locally, like the fact that these local shops are still selling vape carts to kids. Still, they're not even old enough to have that, right? They're not even 18 years old. They're
Yeah.
still selling it to them. So we're still going to see this issue because it's not being regulated. The police aren't going to knock on the door and say,
No.
oh, let's investigate. Not enough people are dying from it, quite frankly, for them to be investigating it, which is a sin.
I mean, we need to give the message, continue giving the message to the community, advocacy and everything. Because I'm always doing advocacy for, for any people here in America that they're not misinformed, because there's a lot of misinformation on the webs. I don't want to tag her. It's just constructive criticism, but there's a lot of misinformation, and everybody they are reading and they're asking me, send me text messages. This is true, and I said no. Get the information from the real official authorities in official places
Yes.
on the web. Don't get information because somebody's saying it, this and that,
Don't trust Google.
and
Okay. I mean, we all love use Google, okay, for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking Google, because I own a tech company, so I don't want to get in a
No,
fight
no,
with
it's just
Google.
constructive
I'm just
criticism.
saying,
Listen, Google is constructive criticism, and any company
yes,
that we're mentioning.
yes, like even if it was another search engine they were using,
Yeah,
if they
yeah.
went on Yahoo or something,
Hmm.
somehow they are seeing this misinformation because
Hmm.
it's getting put up there and nobody's paying attention. People are
Hmm.
putting misinformation on their websites for these companies that have
Yeah.
these products.
Hmm.
They use a lot of anecdotal evidence. It's not clinically based. You
Hmm.
guys have listened to me now. I don't know how many shows I've had, over 80 now. And I
Yeah.
swear we always go back to research and how you have to look at, like, to your point, the authority. Let's see the proof in the pudding. Is there a clinical research study that was performed? Was there a white paper that was generated? Is this really what happened? A survey
Hmm.
monkey or some sort of questionnaire that you send out to email to people that you've come up with and you've asked questions is not a clinical study. It's not
Yeah.
regulated. And
Hmm.
this is the stuff that makes the FDA upset. The FDA
Yeah.
came down very hard about the vaping, and rightfully so, because it was causing damage to people.
That's what I noticed too. And for those who doesn't know, I live in Vegas for a year last year, and I'm hoping maybe return. I don't know. It depends on the opportunities, but Vegas is a very. I was telling the people, I thought that I was not gonna like it, but outside of the street, there's a lot of lit. You can find beautiful places. They have now. This is just constructive criticism. They have a lot of homeless. It's a big situation in Vegas too, like all the cities. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very sure Philly too had a lot of.
Philly. Oh yeah, they're on the street and it's so cold. And what I feel so bad about, like, Philly, we don't have the best weather. As you know,
Mhm.
you've lived there your whole, you lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah,
I've lived here on and off pretty much the majority of my life. I'm from here.
yeah.
And we have horrible weather. We have very cold weather, ice. These poor people are living on the streets. And it's really sad. Like, just and it's everywhere. I mean, I live in the
It's
suburbs
everywhere.
of Philadelphia, and there's a town that's not too far from where I live. And we have homeless people coming down from that town, walking on a highway. Has no, by the way, it doesn't have any sidewalks because in Pennsylvania, it's not like California where you can
Oh
walk
yeah.
around.
No.
La-di-da. No, we don't. On the highways, there's no walking. As a matter of fact, there's no pedestrian signs a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Hmm.
And these people are taking, like God forbid something happens to them as they're walking down here on a highway,
Yeah.
and they're now in our area. And we never saw homeless people before. I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't
No.
live in urban.
Yeah. No. No.
Yeah, I'm in suburbia, and so, just seeing it here, it's like, oh my God, what are we doing? How are we going to fix this problem?
That's what happened to me. Like that's what I was thinking the other day too. And since I call myself a kid from the border, so I saw a lot of immigration suffering in our community, and what is going on? I was telling the other day, what is going on with this? I mean, we need to solve this issue because we're having big issues here in the border. Mi
Mm-hmm.
gente, we call it my people, are crossing every day, but some of them they don't make it. They die crossing the
Mm-hmm.
desert, the river, the small kids, of the because of the heat, what is going on right nowadays with the heat. I mean,
Oh, our climate is so bad. Our environment, I don't know about you, but I have one of those things, and I can't say her name here. You know what I'm talking about, the A name.
yeah,
She's always,
yeah,
we use it for the box,
yeah. Hmm.
she sits on that, but they sit on that. I mean, so that A thing sends alerts all the time. I don't know if you get them, but I get them all the
Yeah,
time that we
yeah,
have.
I think I got it too.
Yeah, bad air quality, right? Air quality is horrendous right now because of all the fires.
Yeah,
Canada is on fire everywhere, all over the map. And all this smoke is blowing down all over the United States, and you can't breathe. And then we have that extra heat because we screwed the environment up. And now it's 120 degrees, and
oh no.
people are dying, and they're road workers, they're bus drivers, they're people that don't have the opportunity to work in cool, air
Yes,
conditioning, right? My dad
yeah.
was one of them. He was a Pennsylvania Turnpike guy. he was on the roadway laying blacktop and
Yeah.
digging hills and trenches and things like that.
Mhm.
Manual labor, all those
Mhm.
manual labor people who are dying because of excessive heat warnings.
I'm always encouraging the when I was in Vegas too. I remember during the summer, I was always encouraging people, don't let your kids on the car, don't let your
Oh,
pets on the
pets.
car. The
And
heat was bad in Vegas on last year when I was there. I cannot imagine this year. Oh my God,
oh,
it's
right. And then labor issues, right? I'm watching and reading a lot about the unions,
yeah.
because that's where I grew up with. My dad was union, right? He was president of the Steelworkers Union for a
Mhm.
local steel company here in
Yes.
Phoenixville. And then he was a Teamster on the Turnpike. And then seeing the abuse to the laborer who's just trying to make money to put food on the table, and
Yeah.
they're not giving them proper masks. They're not giving them the access to cool air. They're out there, constantly. And I'm glad that, at least in the Commonwealth, I see our governor constantly, Shapiro's constantly saying, we have to
Mhm.
protect our workers. We have to make sure they're taken care of. Yeah, it's just horrendous what's happening.
Yeah, me, that's why I like to do a lot of advocacy because I remember when I was living in Mexico, I had this crazy, not it's not a crazy idea. I have this every time that we call it you want to lose your food on the ground. I remember this image in my head that we were very poor in Mexico. Didn't we
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
have anything to eat. And I came here when I was 17 years old looking for a new perspective of life and learn English and get educated the best possible way because my parents couldn't afford to go to college, so they were working. And I was my first in my generation to graduate from college, if I can call it that way, and educating myself. And it's just, and not only you don't have to be from Mexico, from different countries as immigrants in this country, and you come here for a better opportunity. Listen, we don't come here to steal your jobs. We just come here for like a better job opportunity. That's what I tell the people, and that's why I like to be surrounded from very diverse cultures. And I believe in all religions. I tell the people that give me peace. And my mother uh, raised me so well to be so open-minded in a
Mhm.
respectful way with all the sexual orientation, with all these LGBTQ plus, with all different people. And I'm always around by any different people because every person for me has a talent,
Mhm.
and I don't discriminate nobody. And that's the reason I'm always having the time to work with great people, with a great leadership team, with everybody involvement. For me, for example, like I like to be humble because I believe a lot of that everybody has a talent, and the people who clean the hotels, the people who clean the streets, I
Mhm.
always speak to them, no matter who you
Me
are. I'm
too.
not intimidated, and I tell
Mhm.
the people, and I tell the students every time that they invite me to be a speaker in the universities to listen, treat others well. That's it. Be humble, be respectful, and have something in mind, a goal or something.
Mhm. Well, it's because we came from humble beginnings. I wasn't first generation immigrant. My parents were born here. Their parents were born here, but then the grandparents, came over.
Yeah.
So my parent, great grandparents. And so I understand, like everything that I've ever achieved, I've had to pay for and work for, right? I
Yes.
didn't have this parachute
Mhm.
because my dad,
Wow.
because he
It,
was a
it gives me
Teamster.
goosebumps because it reminds me when I was like a kid too, and
Yeah, it's
I used
tough.
to dream a lot of stuff, and
Yeah. And that's why I feel like, we're making a difference in society from a
yeah,
humanitarian standpoint because we get it. We're not prejudicial. We know
yeah,
where we came from, and we
yeah,
want to make sure that we give people who may not always have a voice
yes.
with what we do.
That's why I always encourage the students and everybody, like, please, it's just constructive criticism. Don't feel entitled.
Yes.
Everybody has to work. If you don't come in like me, for example, in my example, I don't come from a very wealthy family. It's just maybe not even a middle class family or something. You can call it in that way. But I had to work so hard, many sacrifices, people who closed me the doors. They didn't believe in me. And I was like, you know what? No, I believe in myself. I'm an
Hmm.
immigrant and I came to this country to fight in a good way, to have a great job, to be the inspiration for others, and to open the door to create a pathway for those who doesn't have a voice. And that was my main motivation, my parents and me, because I'm the only kid in my family. I don't have any brothers and sisters, but never been spoiled. My father was very tough with me. He said, you got to work hard for your stuff.
Hmm.
We don't even did. I remember my parents, well, until this day, they don't speak English. They speak Spanish. And I was a translator when I was 8, 10 years old in every restaurant. And my father was, what is this? What is he saying? What is on the menu? And I said, okay, hold on, listen. And I was having the patience. And it's a challenging being from another country, not only Mexico. I'm very sure for all the immigrants, it's challenging being here. I remember I arrived to this country when I was 17, no English at all. It was hard. They threw me just to the boss, like you can call it. Like I remember in high school, no English at all. I had to survive in a certain way that I
Hmm.
had to be fast and learning, learning,
Hmm.
learning. And it's been a challenge. It's been a journey. I'm very sure everybody has a journey like me or different
Yeah.
journey to be to try to be a successful person. And that's something that I relate to every immigrant in this country. And it's hard. It's hard, but I still believe, Miss Christina, I still believe that there's hope. There's people out there that they're still fighting and they're still fighting for their dreams. And I want to that's the thing about me. I like to see people being successful in America,
Hmm.
in the world too, because it's hard.
And not, and let me make sure I clarify because I know enough about you to say this.
Yes.
You don't mean like successful in America, like a huge company, like,
No.
you know, being
Good point. Good
successful.
point.
Yes, because I don't want people to be like, oh, it's the
No.
American dream. No, being successful in your own right,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you've been able to achieve. Look at all
Yes.
the things that you've achieved, in your career and what you're going to continue to achieve
Mm-hmm.
because you're not done yet. You
Mm-hmm.
still have a lot of things to do. And
Right.
you're taking on new clients because you're ready to, sink your teeth into another endeavor working with people that believe in the same causes that you do, that they're good
Yes.
people. Like that's like when we started off, this whole discussion when I brought that up,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I really admire about you and your transparency and your
Yeah.
kind heart. You have a kind heart. You run head and heart in connection with one another. Not a lot of people can do head and heart. It's either head or heart.
Yeah.
It's never head and heart. And so there's not many of us out there that are head and heart people and
You're right.
service
Because
leaders.
I want to
Yeah.
share this with you. I remember when I was looking for a job, they used to close me the doors, and they used to tell me, "You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You don't speak English well, or this and that." And I was not taking it personal. I was like, "Okay, I need to get better in this and this and this and that." And then I still believe in me. And being successful means, like you mentioned, when you have a small business or you're working in this small company, but you're getting a good raise, or you're getting, I don't know, all these, goals, achieving goals in here, anything. It's just anything applies to the successful world,
Mhm.
meaning, and it's just everybody, I'm very sure here everybody has a different journey. And I like to hear a lot of stories, motivational stories from different people. And like you are a quiet example, like, of
Oh, thank
motivational
you.
story. And for those who doesn't know, Google her and you will find who is really her, with a kind heart and a really great person. And this is why I like to do this kind of interviews, podcasts, and everything, because maybe you can change it. Maybe somebody's having a bad day, and and,
Hmm.
and Miss
Just one
Christina here
person.
or us, maybe we can change
Right.
your
We
life,
can
your
help you.
perspective.
Right. If you're feeling a little not so confident, say,
Yes.
right? And you need to be around people that are more confident and more
Yeah.
inspirational. That's
Hmm.
one of the reasons why I do these podcasts is because I like to bring people on so that we can show people we're the same. And secondarily, I always try to teach some sort of lesson or something on
Yes.
this podcast with my guests based on who they are as a person. And there's lots of ways for people to feel supported, and just reaching out to the right people, like Genaro, for example, like he will always talk to you and try and help you. I know for a fact. I was just recently introduced to him about something that happened that I needed to talk to media people about, that wasn't so related to my companies. It was more of a personal matter dealing with my mom's stuff. And you kindly took my call right away. You wrote back, yes, let's get on the call. Let's get this calendared. And then I had to tell you things that were like, yeah, okay, there's already an article out there. But like I had to tell you the backstory and what happened. And it's
Mhm.
a lot, you
Yes.
know. Um,
And
but you were there to kind of like guide me through. And then you sent out a bunch of emails to people to try and
let's
help
spread
me.
all the media from New York world and say, let's
Yeah.
find out who's gonna.
Yeah. And we're still working with all of that stuff, but you know what? That's just a testament of who you are as a person. Like you truly want to help people. So
Yeah.
I'd like people to realize that it's not nonsense when we talk about stuff like we're here to help. We
Yes.
are here to help, and
That's that's the message that I want to give to the community. I'm always willing to help the people. It doesn't matter where you what your sexual orientation, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what your background. For me, it doesn't matter. We have to help. And that's my
Mhm.
vision. Like I have a mission to help the people, like and to give the message. And that's I think I have a purpose. Everybody has a different purpose in life, I'm very sure. But for me, it's just helping, and I just want to see somebody succeed. And at the end of the day, and I say, I met that interesting person the other day, and she told me her dream, and now I can see her that she's becoming her dream is becoming a reality, and that's
Yes.
those are the type of stories that I like to hear sometimes.
And we want to also help people feel brave, right? Because a
Yeah,
lot of times being an entrepreneur,
yeah,
especially, I've been shooting a lot of podcasts this week. I was stacked up with a lot of guests this week.
I can't imagine.
And we try to like keep them like, because this isn't my full-time job. This is just
Yeah,
something I do on the side.
yeah.
It's fun.
Hmm.
Um, but I was talking to another entrepreneur a couple of days ago, and
Hmm.
we were talking about how hard it is sometimes because when we come up with an idea, we know that it's going to work, right? We've thought it through before we've actually said something out loud about it. But there's lots of times there's naysayers that don't believe, right? Because they're not cut from the same cloth, if you will, as
Yeah.
we are. And
Hmm.
so we sit back and we root for them because we know that they're going to be successful, right? Because they came up with an idea, they have a plan, they're going to execute,
Yeah.
they're not, pardon me, they're not going to give it up. Like even when I started this podcast 3 years ago, I
Uh-huh.
think it was, yeah, 3 years, no, 2 years ago. I'm sorry. The brand is 3 years old. The podcast is 2 years old. Um, my team came to me and said, listen, we think it's time for you to do a podcast. You host it. And I'm like, what? I've always been on your side, Genaro, never on this side, never. I'm like, well, I don't think I'm very interesting. What would people want to listen to me for? I'm kind of
Yeah.
boring. Like, yeah, and they were like, no, no, no. You have a lot that you can teach and show people, and
Yeah.
you're attached to so many different people because of who you are. You're very diverse, right? I'm just not a biotech person, or I'm just not a patient advocate, or I'm not just a tech person.
Hmm.
I'm a human at the end of the day with
Of course.
thoughts.
Of
And
course. I mean, you had experience in everything.
so
And
I did it. And and I love it. Now I at first I was like, oh, I was very nervous. I'm like, I hope I do a good job because I don't want to let down my production team.
yeah.
That's this
Uh-huh.
was their vision and stuff. And now it's like second hat. Like I just had a bunch of meetings this morning, had nothing to do with the brand, nothing to do with this. And I just switch it and turn it back on. Like, okay, now I am Christina DiArcangelo. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today.
It's interesting, And when I spoke to you the first time, I was like, I can see I have this when I was a kid, I have this like I'm very sensitive to energies when I was a
Hmm.
kid. And when I met Christina, for those who doesn't know her, I feel her good energy, and I said, you know what, she got it. So I think and that's why we end up like doing a lot of this the first time podcast and have this kind of connection in a good way with
Yeah.
as the professionals and everything. It's been so quietly a great experience for me.
Well, thank you. It's been equally as important and wonderful too. And, I'm really excited that you agreed to come down and
Of course,
cover our
anytime.
medical cannabis educational event in Miami.
Yeah.
I
Maybe we're
told
gonna end up working together. Who knows?
I think we will, honestly. I mean, well, I guess this might be a good place to end because we went a little bit over
Yes.
on time. I
Yes.
hope that's okay. We will have Genaro on again for sure.
Sure. I mean, and trust me, folks, people, we have a lot of stuff to discuss, a lot of subject, mi gente. So we're like, and for all the Latinos here, follow Miss Christina their candle also. So she's amazing, and all the Latino community or all non-Latinos, immigrants, follow her on all the social media platforms. And I'm very sure you're gonna know what I'm talking about when I'm
Oh,
telling you following her on all the social media platforms.
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really do. You don't have to say any of those things, but I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for
Thank you.
joining me today.
Of
Um,
course, and
and
thank you for all the our viewers, and I hope this message spread in all the social media platforms.
oh, thank you. So, as we always say in every one of our podcasts, remember, we are the same. I am Christina DiArcangelo.